Throughout my life, I have been a girl of boundless freedom. I always did whatever I wanted, went wherever I wanted, and wore whatever clothes I desired. I easily brought my friends, both boys and girls, home. In my own room, I established relationships with my boyfriends and did 1,000 other things that none of my peers, relatives, or contemporaries could do. Money was plentiful for me, so I didn't worry about it, and therefore, my friends always envied my freedom and carefree life. They would tell me that I was the luckiest and happiest girl in the world. However, they were not aware of the inner workings of my life and did not know what was going on behind all that prosperity. I am the only child of my parents, but the difference between me and other people's children is that I am a bastard. Of course, after my birth, my parents marry and become legitimate, and they get a birth certificate for me. But since, according to my maternal family, my conception occurred when Ardeshir, the young, was no longer lawful for one another, I was not considered an ordinary child by them. Since childhood, due to this issue, I have heard many taunts from others. I was almost excluded from family gatherings, and any small or large mistake that any ordinary person made, I would commit it, and others would attribute it to my illegitimate status, as if I had wanted to be illegitimate myself. My maternal aunt used to work with my father, and they both worked in the same office. Then these two become very close, and they confide their lives to each other. From there, my aunt realizes that Ardeshir does not suit his wife, and in a way, they have taken emotional divorce from each other. So she introduces her unmarried young sister to Ardeshir. My mother, who was not a child at the time, used to hang from the trees with her family members to play when she was a child. But when my mother mounts, the other children give her a firm scare, and she falls from a height and hits her head on the ground. From then on, the young woman suffers a bit mentally, and her intelligence decreases a level compared to ordinary people. That is, not that she has completely fallen behind, she just becomes a little more simple than ordinary people. My mother, who has been a very beautiful girl, also has her own situation, and many suitors are found for her. But all of them, after spending a short time with my mother, could not get along with her and left. So after a while, no one came to propose to her, and for this reason, her brothers and sisters-in-law begin to work to find a suitable husband for her. My mother usually does not have the option in many of her actions. For example, suddenly she talks a lot and annoys everyone, and conversely, she dives into herself for a while and does not get up from her bed that you are afraid she is dead. She mostly has loud, nervous, and scary laughter that shakes your body. She has childish behaviors a lot, but most of all, she humiliates me in places where I shouldn't be embarrassed in public, and it's better not to be present with her in public places at all. And in general, life with her is not easy. My father Ardeshir, who sees my mother for the first time, is fascinated by her stunning beauty and does not understand the difference between me and other ordinary people. But when he realizes this issue later and sees that my mother's family wants to dominate her, he gets angry and establishes a relationship with my mother for revenge, and takes her daughter from her and gets her pregnant. Then he says that he does not want your daughter and goes. But a few months later, when my uncles realize that their sister is pregnant, they understand that it is my father's job and go to his house and take my mother away and take her eyebrows in front of his wife and children, and later force her to come and get my mother. When I was a month old, my parents got married, and in this way, a coercive family was formed. My father has only 1 day off a week, and that too for fear of my uncles, otherwise he does not come even 1 day, and the rest of the week is with his wife and other children. In general, he does not like me much, both because of my involuntary status and because I am illegitimate. And in general, having or not having me, my studies, and my relationships are of no importance to him, and despite having both a father and a mother, I have never tasted true parental care, and worse than that, not only did anyone ever care about me, I had to take care of my mother alone. In a way, I had become the young guardian because since I grew up a little, my uncles and aunts and my father no longer took responsibility for my mother, and the whole burden of taking care of her fell on me. My mother, who does not have a fixed temper and sometimes cannot be restrained, sometimes gets into dangerous situations. All my time was spent taking care of her until I got tired and couldn't indulge in my own activities and leisure anymore. So, I had to take her with me everywhere, knowing that reasonable leisure with my mother in public places was not possible. I had to take her with me to late-night parties and gatherings where no one cared about anyone else, and everyone was busy with themselves. Gradually, she became the basis of all my troubled games. When I saw that she cared little for her family or her husband, why should I care about her activities? It was not my duty at all, and I was only concerned about her health, life, and sustenance because of my sense of maternal filial duty. I couldn't take care of her in all aspects by myself, but eventually, a big incident happened, and I was the main culprit. One day, my friend Seema called me to come quickly because her mother had been injured in our neighborhood and was aimlessly fleeing until I arrived. They had taken her to the hospital, and when I arrived, some people there had put their heads on her, and when I realized that they had poured my young daughter, they wanted to beat me. The story was that Seema and I saw each other at a party, and because we were very similar, we hit it off, and her family was just like her, so we got along very well together. My mother, who was with me most of the time, was also accepted by their family, so much so that I had comfortably left my mother with them several times to do my work, just like that day. But out of everyone's sight, my mother falls in love with the neighbor's husband, and he deceives her and takes her to his house to fool around with her. But suddenly, his wife arrives at the scene of the betrayal, and my mother sees her husband with her husband and grabs a knife and attacks my mother. Seema also escapes from their house in time, and she finds her way into the streets. The rest of the story ends happily with the intervention of Seema's family and explaining the situation to my mother's family, and the matter is resolved there. But after that incident, a big wake-up call hit me. I was scared to death because I had experienced such situations before, so I decided to change my way of life because that incident could have ended much worse, and I had brought great luck. I felt a severe sense of guilt towards my mother and wanted to make up for it myself. The truth is, I was dissatisfied and tired of the lifestyle I had, so at the suggestion of one of my acquaintances, I wrote my own name and my mother's name in a yoga class, and from that yoga class, our lifestyle gradually changed. And we replaced many bad habits with very good ones and became a completely different person. We didn't go to parties much anymore, restricted alcohol consumption, smoked very little on special occasions, exercised every day, and even improved our eating habits. And I spent a lot of time reading books and getting successful courses. And for my mother, who was having a hard time, I hired a personal trainer to take care of her and guide her. I myself became an inspiration alongside an experienced trainer and managed to work alongside him. In the meantime, in these classes, I met a gentleman who became entangled in our lives, Bardya. He was a boy whose parents divorced when he was a child, and his mother went abroad, and he lost his father, who was very dependent on him in recent years. To save himself from the great sorrow that had befallen him, he entered our classes. There, we found mutual attractions towards each other, and in the end, we agreed with each other. I told Bardya about all aspects of my life minus the stories my mother had at the time. There was no need for Bardya to be aware of those memories because both myself and my mother had changed. Bardya, who showed a lot of sympathy towards me and completely understood me, accepted all my past and we quickly got engaged. Bardya and I had many common points, the most important of which was the absolute loneliness of both of us. Although he really had no one, and I was alone with a family and acquaintances, we were both alone. Even our engagement with Bardya was held in complete privacy, and except for our witnesses and my parents, no one else attended our engagement ceremony. I didn't want people who weren't in my pain to be present on the happiest day of my life. Bardya and I really clicked with each other and had a very good understanding of each other's spirits, and every moment of being together was really enjoyable for us. The relationship between Bardya and my mother was also interesting, and they had a very good and funny relationship, and I was reassured about my mother, and I felt at ease. After our wedding, we moved to our neighborhood to be closer to my mother, and everything was going great. I was completely enjoying my new life, and I was very pleased with the decision I had made to make changes. Bardia was truly a very good man, and I couldn't find any faults with him. He even managed to win over my father, who had been distant with us, and my father, who had really taken a liking to his son-in-law, was coming over to our house more often, and his relationship with me and my mother had become warmer. However, a foolish behavior of mine ruined our life together. After the changes I had made in my life, I had very little contact with my old friends, and I only occasionally contacted some of them, including Seema. Seema told me that she wanted to get married, and since she didn't have any sisters or close friends, she asked me to be her bridesmaid. I didn't mind, and I agreed. At that wedding, I let go of some of my routine, and I acted very foolishly, remembering old memories with Seema's family when I was drunk, and I said things that I shouldn't have, things that I had never admitted to before. And the people who were there confirmed all my statements. The next day, Bardia, who was still sober, took me with a few of my clothes and left me at my parents' house, and he himself went away. Bardia couldn't fully digest our lives before me and those events, and more than that, he was nervous that I wasn't completely honest with him. I tried very hard to convince him with convincing reasons to forget everything he had heard from me that night, and his document was 2 years of my hard work for change, and that I was crazy in love with him and willing to do anything to keep him. But it was useless, and we separated. This incident that happened shook me greatly, and it feels like when a person falls to the ground for the second time, it's harder for him to get up. I can never erase my past, just as I can't change my parents, and it's very painful for me, but from every angle, I see no solution other than to get up again and strive for a better life.